Hello, I'm Sue Outlaw, Marketing Manager at Human Kinetics, and I want to thank you for joining us today for the third webinar in the Crisscross Virtual Challenge webinar series. Human Kinetics is happy to be one of the sponsors of this innovative and exciting virtual challenge, and these webinars are such a great perk of taking part in this challenge. This webinar is being recorded today, so you can listen to it again anytime, and in the email you'll receive with the link to the recording, you'll get information on a great discount from Human Kinetics that can save you up to 40% on all of our great running and sports conditioning titles. But hurry and take advantage of it. It expires at midnight on Sunday. We've got a fantastic speaker for you today, so let me turn it over to Jan Seeley, co-director of the Christie Clinic Illinois Marathon Race Weekend and creator of the Crisscross Virtual Challenge, to get things started. Jan?
Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We've been, when I decided to do this webinar series, it was all about having Beardsley on, I have to say. But anyways, thank you, Sue. Thank you to Human Kinetics for helping us put on these great webinars. We hope that those of you who watch, whether live or after the fact, enjoy them. I always like to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. So good news, you can see that I am wearing my Crisscross Virtual swag. I'm a legitimate entrant. I'm doing the double crossing and have already made my way all the way across the west to east route, 224 miles, and about 110 miles coming down from the north. So last week we did finish all of the stuffing for people who indicated they wanted to pick up their race swag at Mike's Body and Soul stores, and you should have received emails from me over the last week giving you the green light to go down and pick that up. So that means that now I get to turn my attention to the 400 plus packages that are going to be shipped. And I am going to be doing that personally. We invested in ShipStation, which is a software that allows us to take great advantage of postal rates. Please be patient with me. It's new. I have my tutorial tomorrow. I don't have a bunch of Oompa Loompas out here in Champaign-Urbana helping me stuff the packages. It's just me, and I can't do 400 packages in one day. But the response to the swag has been really positive, and so trust me, it'll be worth the wait. So that is my housekeeping there. I'm so excited, as I said, to have our good friend Dick Beardsley with us today, and I'm going to just do a very quick introduction. Just some of you may not know Dick. Those of us here in Champaign, we love Dick. We know a lot about him, but I know we have new viewers, and so let me just tell you quickly about him. Dick is a two-time champion of the Grandma's Marathon up in Duluth, Minnesota, and a two-time Olympic Marathon Trials qualifier. He's won many marathons, including, of note, the London Marathon, which he won in a tie, which is, probably won't have time to tell that story today, but that's really interesting. Doesn't happen that often, although it has happened at the Illinois Marathon, as well as the Napa Valley Marathon. He has run the 7th fastest U.S. men's marathon time, 2:08:54, which is pretty darn fast. And there's a list you can go and see that he is the 7th fastest. Dick rose from humble origins to become one of the greatest marathoners in the world in the early 1980s, only to be brought down by a series of athletic injuries and followed by a string of freak accidents around farming and cars, until doctors predicted that he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Gradually, Dick became a slave to painkillers, and the man who dueled Alberto Salazar in the heat of the 1982 Boston Marathon, fortunately has been able to turn his life around in dramatic fashion, directing to his recovery the same fierce passion that he used when he was an elite athlete. Today, Dick and Jill live in Bemidji, Minnesota, where they own and operate the Bemidji Lake Bed and Breakfast, excuse me. We will hear more about that at the end of our interview. And he also has a very successful fishing guide business, which was something that was always part of Dick's life. I can't wait to hear more about that. Dick's a member of Team New Balance. He's a highly sought after and compelling speaker all around the countries. If we weren't in COVID, I probably couldn't even gotten a slot on Beardsley's schedule, because that's how busy he is, traveling around to races and churches and schools and corporations and nonprofits all the way across North America. Back in 2004, the University of Minnesota published his autobiography. It's called A Runner's Toughest Race. Excuse me, Staying the Course, A Runner's Toughest Race, and you can still buy that. Is it available through your website or just through Amazon, Beards?
Both.
Both, yeah, and it's a fabulous book. Dick, you've been a guest at our Illinois Marathon at least 3 times that I could think of, maybe 4, and you've been such a big fan, and you have such a huge following here in Champaign-Urbana. It's kind of like you're here but you're not. You're on Zoom, but we'll take it. So thank you and welcome, Dick.
Well, Jan, thank you. Yeah, it's this modern technology. It's great. You know, even though I'm not there in Champaign-Urbana, it's I'm 900 miles away or whatever. But it seems like I'm right there, and I'm really happy to be on with you today. We'll have a lot of fun.
Good. Well, before we talk about your sort of running and how you got started in running, how's the bike been this winter on Lake Bemidji? Dick is obviously in the winter we're using poles, but now the whole ice fishing culture is a thing in of itself.
Oh my gosh, Jan. Yes. When I was a kid growing up, you know, it was sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, freezing your tail end off. And now, you know, like some of the ice houses I have out on Lake Bemidji here, you know, honest to gosh, the one has color television, a bathroom, stove, oven, bunks. It's like, it's 70 degrees in there. It's like, I mean, it can be 40 below outside when they get out of my truck and they step into the fish house, and it's come a long, long way. So, but I've been really, really busy. You know, a lot of people are looking for things to do outside that maybe they have never done before. And so I've been really busy with I can't guide. I can't actually be in the fish house with them because you can't practice, you know, the social distancing. But I get them all set up. I check in on them. I clean their fish for them. It's just like I was there, except I'm not there. And but they have a lot of fun, and the people that sleep out overnight in it really enjoy it because most people have never slept in a fish house out on the ice before. So it's been a good winter so far.
Well, that's great. You know, Beards and I have been friends for about 20 years. We were chuckling about this before we started the show, but when my kids were turning 10 and 5, my boys, Jake and Paul, who are now 30 and 25, I kidnapped them for their birthdays. Their birthdays are a day apart at the end of June, and I put them in the car and I drove. At the time, you were living in Minnesota, up in Detroit Lakes, and I drove them 750 miles. I didn't tell them where I was going. We were going to stay at the hotel that you and your wife were running at the time, and go on a fishing trip with Dick Beardsley. So we went and we got there, and we did like a half-day trip and a full-day trip, and it was just lovely. And I still have the fishing rods that I got in your autographed on the handle. So. You know, it was great.
That was a fun time.
Yeah, it was. You know, I'm sure there's people here that would, you know, might want to go on a fishing trip with you later. We'll talk about that. But, you know, Dick, I think a lot of people think because you were this amazing elite athlete that you like popped out of your mother's womb in running shoes, when in fact, like nothing could be further from the truth. Tell us the path that even led you to become a runner.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy path compared to most people that were kind of got to the top of the heap, so to say. So growing up here in Minnesota, you know, my life revolved around the outdoors, hunting and fishing and trapping and milking cows. And I started my own fishing guide business when I was 12. And girls never, I mean, you know, they just never, I was never interested in. It was always about being outdoors and doing this and doing that until I was 17 and I was just starting my junior year of high school. And it was like suddenly my hormones had just quickly changed, and girls started looking to be a lot better than a dead raccoon laying alongside the road. But I was, you know, you probably won't be able to tell from listening today, but I was the most shy, bashful kid. I mean, the thought of saying hi to a girl, or let alone speaking to one, or heaven forbid, asking one out on a date, it just made my stomach turn upside down. But I noticed that a lot of the guys I knew that were good in various sports, they'd be wearing their high school letter jackets around school, and they always had girls hanging all over them. So I'm thinking, well, if I can earn myself a letter jacket, the girls will just automatically come to me. So like a lot of, you know, young boys, young men, I went out for the football team. You know, I'm 6 foot tall, 135 pounds. And that first day I got gang tackled, and I remember getting up from that pile of guys, and my helmet was on crooked, my shoulder pads were sticking out, my football pants were down to my ankles. And there's not a girl alive that is worth going through this, and I quit. So Jan, my entire football career lasted about 43 and a half minutes. And I was devastated, you know, but, you know, sometimes, I mean, you know, what we perceive as sometimes terrible things in our lives, it turns out to be incredible good blessings. And that's what it was for me. A friend of mine told me about this sport called cross country, and he said, no, you don't get tackled, because that's one of the first questions I asked him. And, I thought, well, it sounded like fun. So I went out for the cross country team, and the first day, I'll never forget this. our coach says, all right, boys, line up on the road out there in front of the school. We're going to do the around the block run. Now, you got to remember, I never run before, but I knew I was determined enough and I was stubborn enough that I could surely run around the block and hang with my teammates. Well, long story short, the around the block was actually 3.2 miles long, and I had to walk the last mile. And when I got back to my high school, all my teammates and coach had already showered and gone home. But Jan, it was like something magical happened when I walked into that parking lot. It was like, wow, I don't know how far I just ran and walked, but I made it. And something just clicked. And, you know, I was just bound and determined to try to make that varsity squad to get the letter jacket, to get the date with the girl, because that was my initial reason to going out. But I started falling in love with the sport, and I was terrible. And I didn't make the varsity squad my junior year, but that following summer, I had a goal for myself. So when I was done with my junior year of school and summer vacation started the next day, my goal was to run every single day. And I ran every day that summer. Now, saying that, I didn't run real far, and I surely didn't run very fast, but I ran every single day. And I came back for my senior year of high school, my second year of cross country. And it was a year to the day we did that same around the block run. And this time, though, instead of all my teammates finishing in front of me, they all finished behind me. Now, that's not saying a whole lot because we didn't have a very good team, but it showed me that, man, don't let anybody, especially yourself, ever keep you from pursuing those goals and those dreams that you have for yourself.
When did you realize that you could be really good in running?
So when I got into college, so I went to a small college, the University of Minnesota / Waseca, a 2-year.
Were you recruited to go there?
No, there was no recruiting, but I went there, and I happened to, when I went to take a look at the school, I said, so do you have sports? They go, yeah, we have, like, in the fall, football, cross country. In the spring, we have track, baseball. And so I met with Coach John Folkrod, who was a chemistry teacher there, and a wonderful coach, still very close to him to this day. And I could just tell when I could get into college and I could start running races up to 10,000 meters, it seemed like the further I went, the better that I was able to do. And I'll never forget what Coach Folkrod told me one day. All the rest of the guys had gone in, and I was out running quarter-mile repeats along the edge of a cornfield, and Coach Folkrod was out there timing me. And we got all done, and he put his arm around my shoulder as we're walking back in. He says, you know, Dick, I really believe you can become as good of a runner as you want to be. And I'm going to get choked up now. And I never, ever forgot that. You know, it's amazing how powerful words can be, whether it be positive or negative. But that had a big impact on me.
Yeah, if ever there was a year when words matter, we say that a lot. Our words do matter.
Yes.
So I understand that you left University of Minnesota Waseca after a year to get married and to you think become a farmer. But then what you kept running, obviously. So kind of connect the dots in terms of what happened next, because I think there's a New Balance connection coming in, isn't there?
There is. So I actually graduated from the University of Minnesota Waseca. It was a 2-year school.
Oh, it's a 2-year. Okay, got it.
I was on the 3-year program.
So you were there for 2 years.
Yeah, actually 3.
Okay.
But then my running didn't improve enough, Jan, to where I got a partial scholarship to go out to South Dakota State University in Brookings.
That's right.
And run up there. And that's where I met
you know what? I'm just behind, right?
Yeah. And I was out there. Really, the only reason I went out there was to run. I mean, I thought I have a 2-year degree. School wasn't really my thing. Went out there, met my first wife, Mary, and then after the cross country season was over, I thought, well, gosh, we decided we're going to get married, and I thought we're going to probably have a bunch of kids, and I thought that school, I'm done. And I went back moved out to a farm and was milking cows, and I hadn't run for 3 months. And it's just crazy how certain things happen. So one day, Jen, I'm heading out to the post box out the road to get the mail, and before I had to do chores, and I walk back in and I throw the mail on the table, and I was the only one in the house, and And I looked at I can't remember which one, but one of my running magazines, the subscription hadn't run out yet, had come. So I had a little time and I paged through it, and I see an article in there on what it took to qualify for the 1980 Olympic marathon trials. Now, this was for the 1980s, so the qualifying standard then was 2 hours, 21 minutes, and 56 seconds. Now, my best was about 11 and a half minutes slower than that. But here I am standing there. At the time, I was, 22 or 23, 22, I think, in these dirty old coveralls. And all of a sudden, remember what Coach Fulcrot had said to me? He goes, Dick, I really believe you can become as good a runner as you want to be. And at that moment, I thought, I can milk cows, do my fishing business when I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond. But if I don't see how good of a runner I can become right now, I don't ever want to get to the age I'm at now, almost 65, and look back and say, why didn't I at least try? Mm-hmm. And the next day, I drove into the big city of Minneapolis, St. Paul. I found a one-room apartment in a little town on the outskirts, $400 a month. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, but I figured I'd figure it out. And I started training 2 times at least, sometimes 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. And didn't, my first wife, Mary, was working at a bank, and, but still it was a struggle. And I had no extra money to buy any shoes. I was duct taping them together so I could keep them on my feet. And I got wind of a sporting goods convention coming to a big hotel in Minneapolis, and all the running shoe companies I heard were going to be there. So I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can get myself a shoe sponsorship. Now, that's a pretty big doings for a guy that was maybe average runner at best, but I've always said this to myself, and I try to pass it on to others, is what does it hurt to ask? Mm-hmm. What's the worst somebody can tell you is, I'm sorry, we're not sure. I typed up these 12 little resumes, had to double and triple space them just so they would fill a whole page. And I went to this hotel, and it wasn't open to the public. It was a buyer's deal only. I got kicked out 3 times, but I finally found a way in there. And I went to every single running shoe company that was there, and handed them a resume, introduced myself, and said, thank you very much. And as I walked away, honest to goodness, mm-hmm. I would hear this crumpling of paper. It was my resume going into the trash can. Mm-hmm. I was down to 1 resume, 2 shoe companies. At the time, Spalding made a running shoe. Mm-hmm. And then there was a company called New Balance. And I'm thinking, okay, which one? I got 1 left, and I'll never forget his name at the New Balance shoe company was Hal DeWaltoff. And again, long story short, I left there with a brand new pair of New Balance 620s that he gave me. Mm-hmm. And now back then they sold for $65. This is 79. That was unheard of for a pair of running shoes for that costly. And he goes, Dick, when I get back to Boston where our headquarters are, I'll put a little package of stuff together, see if I can get you hooked up with one of our coaches. And he shook my hand. And Jan, I walked out of that convention hall, my feet weren't touching the ground. But the neat part is, so about 10 days later, I get done with the training run, and I'm back in my apartment, and my apartment manager calls. She goes, Dick, I got a big box down here. It says New Balance all over it. So I sprint down there to get it. Honest to goodness, I had to turn it sideways to get it through my door. And I walk into our little living space, and I opened it up. And inside there were 8 or 10 pair of New Balance running shoes, shorts, singlets, socks, warm-up boots. And Jan, I honest to goodness, I cried like I'm going to do now. I cried like a little baby. And it wasn't because I got a box full of free gear. It's because somebody besides me, Dick Beardsley, believed in what I was trying to do. And that in itself, the next morning, Jan, when I got up, put on a new pair of shoes and a new pair of shorts, a singlet, and I went out for a run, I had a giddy up in my step and a quickness that I never, ever had before. Nothing changed other than somebody believed in what I was trying to do. And it was amazing. And now it's been, well, this past November, it's been 41 years I've been with New Balance. Obviously, not for my running. I tell people, I'm like the Walmart greeter for New Balance. They send me out to a running store, and I do a talk and a little fun run. And they've been absolutely wonderful over all these years.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. So give us a peek at what your training was like back then. You mentioned running 2, 3, 10. Like what kind of miles were you doing?
Yeah, so I was so in December, January, February, and about the first half of March, which are our very cold, wintry weather up here in Minnesota, I averaged about 140 miles a week. And, it was basically just going out doing, putting in the miles, getting strong. A couple times a week, if I could find some dry pavement somewhere or a gravel road that the snow would melted down a bit, I would do a little bit of fartlek, or some stride outs just to kind of keep my leg turnover going. And then once the weather started to break in late March, early April, and the roads started to clear up a little bit, then I started adding speed work, and my body was so strong and strength wise from all the miles. Now it could handle the speed work. So then I would drop my mileage to about maybe 120 to 130. Now it doesn't sound like much, but
You slack, are you?
I know, but my body was used to running a lot more, and all of a sudden it's giving itself a break. And then I pretty much did that that training up through November, and then usually November, if I could, I tried to just not put any races on the schedule and just kind of take that month and just go out and run easy. 5, 6, 7 miles. Don't even wear the watch, and just kind of give my body a physical and a mental rest to get ready for the year.
That's a lot of miles.
I don't believe it.
You're known worldwide, but I think, many would say that you're best known for your epic duel in the hot conditions and with Alberto Salazar running, hip to hip in the Boston Marathon 1982. Almost, 26 miles, only, to be outkicked in the last 50 yards and to lose by 3 seconds. And the two of you.
No, 1.6 seconds, Jan.
1.6. Okay. Well, 208.54 to 208. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 208. Yeah. It was what? That's right. 1.4. 202. He ran 208.51. You ran 208.54. 0.03 seconds.
No.
Yeah.
53. He ran 251. I ran 208.52.6, which they rounded up to 208.53.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So that was, the story that when I see that, and you yourself as well, when you see that tape again, we think this time Beardsley's going to win. But it always ends the same. But as you look back now, almost 40 years ago, what stands out, and like what are the takeaways?
Jan, I can't remember what I had for breakfast a few hours ago. I can remember that race 39 years ago. It will be in April. Like I ran it this morning, and I just remember it being a very warm day at the start. And back then, folks that don't know this, but the Boston Marathon by tradition started at 12 noon. It no longer starts that late, and it was sunny, warm, not a whole lot of wind. And, it was, I remember standing on the starting line and looking to my right and seeing Salazar, who was the world record holder at the time. And a little further to my left was Bill Rogers, 4-time winner of the Boston Marathon. And I'm looking up and down this front row, and I'm seeing Olympians and world-class athletes from all over the globe. And I'll be honest with you, part of me is thinking, what the heck am I doing on the start line with these guys? But then I remember thinking, no, I deserve to be here because I've done the work. And I remember when that gun went off, Salazar, seriously, he shot out of there like a rocket, and I was right with him. And I remember going through the first mile in 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and I'm hanging on for dear life. And, when you're hanging on and still got 25.2 miles to go, that's not the best feeling to have. And I thought, okay, Dick, I was just talking to myself internally, just settle down, you'll be fine. And I hit mile 2, and I felt worse. And again, I'm just trying to talk myself down. I was so hyped for this race. And Jen, when I hit mile 3, I felt so bad. The first thought to cross my mind, and I'm one of the most positive people you will meet, was to drop out. That's how bad I felt. And, I look back and I think, how different my life would be today. If I would have taken the easy route out and dropped out, I probably wouldn't be talking to you today. Who knows if I would ever even met you? You just don't know. And it's those moments that you know, I've faced many, many times since then when you don't think you can take another step, but you do. And by mile 4, I didn't feel any better, but I didn't feel any worse. And at that point, that was a huge confidence builder for me. And finally, by 5 miles, I started feeling better. But Jan, what really stands out were the crowds. You know, that was probably the first nice spring day that New England had had all, you know, since, you know, the following fall, the previous fall. And they came out in hordes. I mean, there were 10, 20 deep. I remember on each side, there was no fencing back then. And especially the last 5, 6 miles, they were literally on top of Alberto and I. And if any, and then there were about 100 bicyclers. If you ever, people look at the video, there's a shot towards the end of them looking on us, and you can see who's behind us. There's got to be 75 to 100 bicyclers right behind us on the course. And if anybody would have been close in third trying to get up to us, which thankfully they were a few minutes back, they would have never been able to get through all those bikes. And just the roar of the crowd, and as bad as my body was hurting, my legs and everything else, those last 4 or 5 miles, Jan, probably what hurt more than anything else were my ears. That's how loud the crowd was. It was, it still gives me shivers thinking about it 39 years ago.
Yeah, I can believe that. Wow. You know, certainly one of the most exciting days in the history of the Boston Marathon, and a story we never tire of hearing, honestly.
But let me just add one last thing too, because 2 last things, if it's okay. Okay, first off, we got done and immediately, you know, I grabbed Alberto and gave him a big hug and, you know, congratulated him. He congratulated me. And then, you know, one of the greatest awards in all of sports is to be presented with the laurel wreath for winning the Boston Marathon. You know, the governor's there, the mayor, all the dignitaries. They got this nice podium that they bring the athlete up on. Well, they're bringing Al's up on this podium with the governor and his family and stuff. And I've got some security people trying to get me into the Prudential Insurance Building garage to talk to the press. And I was going by, I looked up there and I saw Al up there. And immediately, without hesitation, he reached down. I'm going to get choked up again, jeepers. And he brought me up on that podium with him. And when they were raising his arm in victory, he was raising mine right along with it. And I will never, ever forget that.
Yeah, that's lovely. Are you guys still in touch?
Yeah, we still are. You know, he's gone through some difficult times, and you know, he always sent me a note when I was some things happening in my life years ago, and I did the same thing for him, and to let him know that, hey, if he ever wants to chat or something, that give me a buzz, you know. But so after that, I get down, and this shows you the kind of people runners are. That's just why I love this sport. So I got some security people trying to get me through this crowd, and it's like LA traffic on a Friday afternoon, you know. And all of a sudden, I feel this tug on my shorts, and I look to my right. There's a couple of young boys, maybe 7, 8 years old, standing there. And one of the boys says, "Mr. Beardsley, can I have that New Balance painter's cap that you're wearing on your head?" I said, "Sure you can." So I took it off and I put it on his head, and his little friend says, "Hey, Mr. Beardsley, can I have that orange sponge you got sticking out of your shoulder?" I said, "Sure you can." So I pulled the sponge out, handed it to him, and I'm thinking, man, if those boys have many more buddies, I'm going to be buck naked here pretty soon. So I never, ever thought about it after that. Well, get this. So in 2004, I think, Runner's World came out, and they did John Brandt did a story called Duel in the Sun. It later was made into a book. And there was all these pictures and stuff. And about a week after it hit the newsstand, I get an email from a gal. "Dear Dick, I saw this, read your article and saw the pictures as my son John, who was a runner, did too. And he called me up and he says, 'Mom, do you think Dick would like his cap back?'" So 22 years after I gave that little boy John this cap, he was an adult, turned into a runner. He sent that cap back to me, Jan.
Oh my gosh,
that's amazing. And now it's at the New Balance World headquarters out in Boston in their museum.
Awesome. That's a wonderful story. Yeah, runners are the best. They are the best. So, your career, sadly, after, that high point, soon after injuries, you ultimately retired. What did you do after your competitive running career ended?
So then I moved back to our dairy farm, and I was milking cows. I was doing my fishing guide business. I just had a lot going on. And one morning on, November 13th of 1989, I got in a hurry, got careless, and I got wrapped up in a piece of farm equipment, actually a power takeoff. And for those people who don't know what that is, it's a long steel shaft that hooks to the back of a tractor, and then the other end hooks to some type of implement, and it spins at about 600 revolutions a minute. And I got wound up in that thing, and by the miracle of the good Lord, I didn't get killed, but I got hurt really, really bad and almost lost my leg, and was in the hospital for a number of weeks and had numerous surgeries to put me back together. But yeah, they put me back together, and I eventually got back to running again, And then,
but then you had some car accidents. Kind of, we got to go down this road now.
Yeah,
what
and
happened?
It was, so once I got recovered from that, for the next, 2 years, really everything was pretty much back to normal. Well, then in the summer of 1992, I was coming home from a little R&R from the cows and whatnot. I was 30 miles from home when a lady ran a stop sign on a country road and T-boned my vehicle and totaled out the car and busted up my back. And so I'm in the hospital with more surgeries. But again, I was fortunate to recover. And then I was got back to running a little bit again. And then that following winter, so just a few months later, I was running down a street in Fargo, North Dakota, and I got hit from behind by a truck, and they found me laying in a snowbank. So back in the hospital, more surgeries, but I recovered. And then that following late spring, I was hiking with my son Andy and a little buddy of his. They were just young boys at the time at Lake Bemidji State Park, kind of where I'm at, close to where I live now. And anyhow, I was up on the very top of this embankment following this little trail. Luckily, the boys were behind me further, and this chunk of ground broke away, and I fell off a cliff and had to get rescued by the first responders and back in the hospital. And it seemed like it was one thing after another. And but I tell you, Jan, through it all, people would say, my goodness, Beardsley, if you didn't have bad luck, you wouldn't have any luck at all. And I honestly never looked at it like that. And but going through all that, it was hard, but it paled, what happened next.
Yeah. Well, keep going. You tell us what happened next.
So anyhow, through all this, I was on a lot of narcotic pain medication. And first off, I want to say this. I don't blame one doctor for my problem I had with opioids, because every prescription I got, if it was a different doctor, always told me, now you got to be careful with these. You can't be on them very long because you can get addicted to them. I chose to take them. They didn't like put a gun to my head and take these. So, but what happened is when, say, the first doctor wouldn't give me any more because he said, no, we can't, we just got to go some other method, then I'd go to another doctor. And now it's virtually impossible to do that today. But back then it was, I just went to another doctor, and I went to about 10 doctors. And finally, there was no doctors left to go to. And I started to forge my own prescriptions. I'd never been in any trouble in my life. I'd never stolen as much as a piece of gum. And here I am forging my doctor's name on a fake prescription, knowing I could go to prison, knowing I could lose everything that mattered to me in my life. But at that point, all that mattered was to get the drugs, to take the drugs, and make sure I didn't get caught. And it was out of control. And I mean, Jan, I was taking upwards of a cocktail of Valium, Percocet, and Demerol, all very highly addictive drugs, upwards of 80 pills a day. And the last few weeks, I mean, they didn't even make me feel good anymore. I was burning a hole in my gut. I get such a bad headache. I'd have to take more just to get rid of the headache. And I knew I needed help, but I was so ashamed of what I'd been doing, and thankfully I finally got caught. And I knew I was in a lot of trouble, but I was so relieved. I was so blessed and so thankful that I was still alive. And I knew the only chance I had, if there was any chance at all to get better, was to be 100% truthful and take responsibility for my actions. And, I got into a treatment program right away, and had a wonderful counselor that she knew when to give me a hug and she knew when to kick me in the butt at the same time. And, but it was really, as hard as it was for me, it was really hard on my family, because being the runner I had been at one time, because of that, it got a lot of media attention. My son Andy was in grade school, and kids were telling him that I was a drug dealer. You know how kids can be. It was, really difficult. And that's what hurts me more than anything about that whole ordeal was not what I went through, but what I put my.
So I know your sobriety is the most important thing in your, in your life, or at least one of the most important things.
Yeah.
You travel around when you can. You do a lot of talks. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So God willing, on February 12th, it'll be 24 years. Jeepers, it's right corner.
February 12th. February 12th.
Yeah. I never take a day for granted, though. But so Jan, I look at things in my life that happened that some people, bad situations, they don't want to talk about it, but for me, like when I had my farm accident, because of the runner I once was, it got a lot of media attention, and the University of Minnesota started a farm safety task force, and they brought me on to go out and talk to farm groups and farmers themselves, saying that, we could send a professor out there with all the stats, but if we can send you out there who survived one, it might have more impact. And so I really look at it that, there's a reason the good Lord put me in this position, and there's a reason why I'm still here. And he gave me a gift to be able to gab a little bit. And when I had the addictions, honestly, I mean, I was within a day or two of never waking up again. And I honestly believe God got me to a point and said, okay, that's enough. I'm bringing you back, and now I'm sending you out to treatment centers across the country so you can tell your story and what hell it is to go through this, and hopefully it'll wake somebody else up and they can get their life back. And so that's how I've looked at it. And, and you're probably going to lead to this, but so, Jan, when I had a few years after I retired from competitive running, I thought, well, I was still pretty young. That, well, one good thing is I know I'll never have to go through anything more difficult than that race against Salazar. I mean, I really thought that, because that's how bad it beat me up. Well, then I had all those accidents and surgeries, and once I recovered from those and got better again, I thought, well, wouldn't want to do that again, but at least I know I'll never ever have to go through anything difficult. I really believe that. And then once again, I was wrong. And then after about 3 years of sobriety, I remember thinking, well, I tell you, I would never want to go through this, put my family through it. But I 100% know, unequivocally, I will never, ever go through anything more difficult than that. I would have bet my life on it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I was wrong.
Yeah. So Andy and Mary's son, Andy, we're going to talk about Andy next.
Yeah.
I knew Andy, and
it
was 5 years ago, past October, that we lost Andy. He was a war veteran and suffered from PTSD.
Yep. Yeah, and he grew up in Detroit Lakes, and he I remember October 3rd, he called me that afternoon, all happy. He says, Pop, he was never much of a runner growing up, but when he was in the Army, he had to run, and so he continued it when he got out a few times a week. And He goes, Pop, I bought a stationary bike. He says, no, I don't have to run outside this winter. He says, I can just ride it in my little home here. And he says, I can't wait for you to see it. And I said, me neither, bud. And 12 hours later, he had taken his life. And I was absolutely devastated. You know, I'm a lot better now, but I talk to him every day. I think about him all the time. And you know, he was my little fishing buddy. He was just everybody knew Andy around Detroit Lakes, and he could walk into a room of grumpy old men and he'd have them laughing in 5 minutes, you know. But you know, what gives me peace, Jan, and hope is he's no longer fighting those demons.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that someday I'll be able to give him a big hug again.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this. You've had some pretty significant mystical events. We won't go into them, but I just know that Andy's still with you, and just like Joe is still with all of us. So, you know, and thank you for telling us about that, because I know that's a very painful part of your life, and we appreciate that. But I do want to end by talking about your life today, which is full of happiness and love with Jill and the Bemidji Bed and Breakfast. Sug, if you could enable me to share my screen, I want to bring up the Lake Bemidji website here. And while I do that, Beards, tell us first of all, like, you know, you're running today. What kind of running are you doing? I know it's probably ugly.
I run every day, and I run 6 miles every day. But I am slower than molasses in January. And I run early in the morning, about around 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm out the door, and it's probably a good thing I run that early, because seriously, if somebody saw me running down the road, they'd probably slow down and think, "My gosh, what's wrong with that guy?" But you know what, Jan? I mean, I go to bed at night, and honestly, I can hardly wait to get up in the morning to go out and do my run. It's my 1 hour, a little over an hour, well, quite a bit over an hour, where it's just me and the good Lord, and I just it's my favorite way to start the day.
Well, I don't know if you can see, so we can hear you, but we're seeing these beautiful pictures about the bed and breakfast that you and Jill own. You guys have been running that since, what, 2018?
No, 16.
16, okay. And it's a beautiful place right across from the lake. And Dick, you have your fishing guide business that you run out of it at the same time. And tell us a little bit more about the house. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's a really neat place. It was built in 1904, so it's well over 100 years old, and it's my wife Jill. It's her baby. Like I tell people, I'm kind of like her Sherpa. You know, in the summertime I keep the grass mowed, in the wintertime I keep the driveway and the walks all free of snow. But because of it, it's so pretty and so well run because of all of her creative ideas, and she's a great breakfast cook and whatnot. And so it's something that, you know, she'd always wanted to have a B&B, and for me to be able to get a Texas girl to come to northern Minnesota,
wow.
She had to she followed her dream all right, but it had to come way north, and she's so taken to Bemidji, and she's very active in the community and volunteering and stuff. So yeah, no, life is good here in Bemidji, Minnesota.
Yeah, well, we'll be sure to share the URL for Bemidji Bed and Breakfast with everybody, and you know, we'll be sending this email out not just to the people who are watching it live, but almost 1,000 people who are doing our crisscross virtual challenge. So do you run 6 miles every day? Do you still do it at the dark 30 pretty much?
Yeah, I get up about 3:15, 3:30. I'm out the door by about 4, and but you know what? It's funny, Jan. You know, now this past year, you know, I haven't done any speaking, so to say, in place or gone to any races to speak. But before that, you know, I still just run 6 miles. But you know, if your race, you know, when I was down there, they had the half, and I think I ran the half, you know, a couple of times, and it's amazing that, you know, I mean, when I ran, I think the last time I ran your half, I ran like under 9 minute per mile pace, and like now in the wintertime up here, I'm not kidding you, I'm running somewhere between 11 and 12 minute miles, you know, but I'm happy with it. And when I get down to like in the 10s, I feel like I'm flying now. So, but saying that, you know, I'll get into a half marathon and I can run a minute and a half, 2 minutes faster per mile, just because you're in that group of people. There's excitement, there's adrenaline going, and it's kind of neat to know that my body still gets excited when I pin that number on my singlet, you know.
That's great. And your 65th birthday is coming up in March.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, listen, Beards, we thank you so much for sharing some of your life today, and really loved seeing more for everybody to see where you guys are in your life with up in Bemidji. And I hope that maybe you'll get some guests from this interview. And want to thank you so much. Hang with me. Our next webinar is going to be in 2 weeks, and we are going to take a deep dive onto what does the 2020 road racing culture and universe look like. We're going to have some event directors from across the country. Doug Thurston from the Big Sur Marathon out in California, and Beth Schluger, who is the owner and founder of the Hartford Marathon and many other races in the Hartford area. And we're going to have somebody from Noon Hydration as well. So that'll be in 2 weeks. That's February 9th. Sue, again, thank you to Human Connects, and Beers. We love you here so much, and we can't wait to have you back. So good luck with the fishing. All right.
Okay,
Thanks so much for being here. This was an incredibly powerful life story, full of just incredible highs and lows, and touched me for sure. Your enthusiasm for life is certainly inspirational. Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for being here. I hope you enjoyed it.